There's a quote I loved that I think a lot of people now can see in our country's politics. And you do have some ideas on how we can get beyond this. So there's a quote by Girard who inspired much of the book. Human beings fight not because they are different, but because they are the same. And in their attempts to distinguish themselves, have made themselves into enemy twins, human doubles in reciprocal violence. That quote would piss a lot of people off, I'm sure.
Yeah, because who wants to think that they may be more like the very people that they think are the problem? Nobody wants to think that. But we often are more alike. I mean, in world mythology, there's almost always, in almost every culture, there is a story about twins, usually identical twins, involved in conflict. In the Bible, in the book of Genesis alone, there are 5 stories of sibling rivalry. And René Girard looked at this phenomenon, okay, they're myths, but why? There's usually something true, right? They're getting at something true in human nature. And the truth that he thought they were getting at is that we're kind of terrified of similarity, and we often hate that which is kind of like us, right? In this, that plays out in funny, small ways, like, I don't know, somebody walks into the office with the same exact haircut that we just got, wearing the same clothes, it's like, it's a little weird. We don't like that at all. And we also tend to see in other people sometimes the very things that we don't like in ourselves. And Girard also said, be careful who you make your enemies, because you become like them. And part of why you become like them is because you're so focused on them, you imitate them often in negative ways, that they become the biggest influence on our lives. And I think there's a really important lesson to be learned here in U.S. politics. It causes us to miss out on a path forward, on a way out of the predicament, because we're so focused in on each other. And the image that I like to use are 2 people that are, I like to think of people standing shoulder to shoulder, looking out at the future, right? Because if they're just standing face to face in a standoff, they can't see the way out. And one small, silly little story I'll never forget, when I was a kid, and I thought of this story after I started writing this book. I remember seeing these 2 dogs behind a baseball field fence near my house. And the 2 dogs were in a standoff. And they both were kind of barking, wanting to get on the other side of the fence. And they would look at each other, and they were kind of on the verge of fighting, hair standing up, tails. And one of them would kind of try to walk away, to get away, and then he would turn around and look back. And neither one of them could get away from the other one. And all either one of them needed to do is just ignore the other one and walk around the fence, right? Like 50 yards away. But they were unable to do that because their focus was completely on each other. And there's a lesson in there when it comes to rivalry and conflict, and the sort of the mimetic force, the centripetal force that holds us inside of a system or an institution or a way of thinking. And we're not able to transcend it because our rival is completely dominating our mindset.
Yeah, you catalog 15 techniques that you use to try and transcend those kinds of destructive dynamics. Let's have you share 1 or 2 so people can have a sense as to making this positive and something that they can recognize, then maybe get beyond.
Sure. There's a couple very simple things, one of them that you could do today if you wanted. And that's, quite simply naming who important models in your life have been and who important models in your life today might be, and actually writing them down. There's something powerful about naming models of desire. And be careful, because models of desire are not the same thing as role models. Models of desire are people that in some sense affect what we want. So they're modeling a desire and not just a role. My accountant is a role model of accuracy and organization for me. I have no idea what the guy desires, so he's not a model of desire for me. So put them all down, positive and negative, right, on a piece of paper, and gain some clarity. You'll probably remember some tomorrow or the next day, and that helps gain some. Naming things gives us some power over them, or over what they do to us. This is Psychology 101, naming your emotions, same concept here. And then the other thing is, and this one is a little bit harder, one of the most positive things that's ever happened to me in my life, in fact, where I learned about mimetic desire and Rene Girard in the first place, was when I went on a silent retreat. And a silent retreat, even if it's for a half a day or a day, will do some pretty scary things to you in a good way. Like things will kind of like bubble up to the surface that you didn't even know were there once the noise of technology and everything recedes. So I think you could start very small with this, even a couple of hours, no technology, put everything away, and see what desires bubble up to the surface. Because my theory and what I've experienced in my own life is that the thick desires that I have, the things that are really important to me, are often just completely crowded out by the thin mimetic desires, the short-term things that I want. And if I spend the rest of my life just chasing the thin mimetic desires and not even letting the thick ones bubble up to the surface, I won't even know that they're there. It's like leaves that are covering them up. So that's not an easy thing to do. There's 15 in the book. Those are two small ones. I get into a lot more detail about how to do those things. But I think that those are just easy ways to start.
Hey YouTube, glad you're enjoying the podcast. If you really like it, hit subscribe, and then YouTube will notify you every time we have a bang up new guest. Thank you.